Everybody thinks of The Lord of the Rings by this stage obviously as this one big film shoot, which is true. The principal photography lasted 14 or 15 months from the end of 99 through all the way through 2000. The initial plan was to start with Fellowship of the Ring for a while. In fact, we didn't really plan on doing any Two Towers or Return of the King until the following year, until the year 2000, about 4 months after we started shooting. That plan actually changed because of the floods that happened in Queenstown.
It was a 100-year flood. People were rowing the streets of Queenstown, you know, it was underwater.
Because of that, we couldn't film any of our exterior sequences that we were meant to shoot that week.
We're thinking we're all the way down here in Queenstown. We have to build some kind of set for wet weather cover.
The biggest space that we could find in Queenstown was a squash court in a hotel.
This hotel, it was a hotel. It's awesome.
The only set that we could actually build that was sort of the right size to fit into the squash court was a set from the third movie of Frodo and Sam and Gollum on the Cirith Ungol stairs.
So that is how we arrived at shooting the very first scene from film 3.
The scene we were doing was in a way, one of the most intense scenes of Return of the King, where Frodo basically sends Sam home.
It was the third film. That was the first time that we jumped away from the first movie. We hadn't done anything from any of the other films.
I frankly was scared to death that I didn't have what it took at that moment, and so was Elijah.
My first reaction was, there's no way. No, we can't. No, we can't. It's got to be something else we can do.
We both actually took our case to Peter. Peter, listen, we're a little, I think we thought we were going to try and talk him into maybe filming it the following week so we could get our heads around it. I don't know if we were going to read the script again or do more push-ups or, I don't know what we were going to do.
I think what's really wonderful about that is he had the utmost confidence that we would get there, that we would be able to deliver exactly what he wanted now, even though we felt like we were slightly unprepared, that ultimately we would get there.
The scene on the ledge was due to be shot over 2 days, so I was going to have to shoot one of the boys on one day and one the other. And I remember we basically flipped a coin because neither of them wanted to do it. And I said, okay, the winner is Sean Astin.
All right. You just startled me is all. What were you doing?
A very important detail of that scene was that it was the first scene that we actually shot with Gollum, without Andy Serkis. And at that point, Andy Serkis had not been cast.
So Randy Cook, the director of animation, was standing in a black polo neck sweater and a beard, looking very suave and kind of like James Bondy.
There were a lot of new elements at play during that sequence, looking off to Gollum where he wasn't there and dealing with that for the first time.
God, that must have been bizarre.
It was very bizarre. And it took a while to get off, get away from the initial nervousness of having to jump into something like that. Go on, get out of here!
It's you.
And through the fear of failure and the commitment to deliver, we did it. We did it.
And we got all of Sean's coverage, essentially.
And then the following day we were going to come back and shoot Elijah Wood's half of the scene. But of course what happened the following day is the sun came out. And we were going to take our chances and just go outside and keep shooting Fellowship of the Ring. We asked the owner of the hotel if we could leave our set standing in his squash court.
Because it would be a real pain to dismantle it and come back with it again. And the proprietor was kind enough to let us do it.
And yeah, we just did a little contract with them and Bob's your uncle.
What happened then, which was miraculous considering it's in New Zealand, in the south of New Zealand, is for the next 5 or 6 weeks, right up till Christmas that year, we didn't have a single day of rain.
Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh.
And the Christmas break came and we still hadn't shot the other half of the ledge. And then in January, when we came back to work after Christmas, we were actually way up in Matamata, like hundreds of miles away, shooting Hobbiton. And this scene, the second half of the Ledge of Cirith Ungol then sort of was one of these scenes that was like an albatross round our necks.
It was always that good old scene we'll get back to and finish one day.
If we can just relax everyone back and I just want to take the boys on
Work this all out.
Guys, just give Pete the cast the set, please.
Of course, what happened is that we didn't end up going back in that squash court to finish that scene until December 2000.
So essentially, people of Queenstown were without squash for over a year, which, is one of the many sacrifices of making these films.
Exactly 1 year after we had shot Sean Astin's half, we finally got to shoot Elijah's half, which was the most weird and unusual way to shoot this scene.
I could help it. I could carry it for a while.
And so when you see that scene in the movie now, when it cuts between Sean and Elijah, you're jumping the span of 1 year. It's like time travel, really.
She was only the innkeeper's daughter, but she managed a pint of my ale.
The Isengard scene where Merry and Pippin are eating and drinking and smoking and reverting back to their Hobbit kind of sensibilities was shot on set in Miramar at 3-foot-6 Studios.
We're pissing! Jesus! We're weeing! Right! Weeing together. Stand by to light those pipes.
We're smoking our pipe weed, whatever pipe weed may be, whatever Tolkien was talking about.
Long bottom leaf.
In The Fellowship, there's a line from Saruman to Gandalf where he says, your love of the Hobbit's weed has kind of, dulled your memory somewhat.
I'm sure it has some sort of effect, whether it's tobacco or some sort of weed. So, how high are we?
They're such a natural comedy team, those two guys. So they played that in a lot of different styles.
Where we'd be slightly drunk.
Welcome!
Very drunk. Slightly high. Very high.
The one that ended up in was sort of the mildly inebriated version, which was probably more appropriate for a PG-13 film.
Welcome, my lords, to Isengard!
So you have come here for information?
Can we not take counsel together as we once did, my old friend? Can we not...
That whole final sequence with Saruman and Gandalf and Theoden was one of these things where basically you had to shoot the Fellowship side of it at one location and the Saruman and Wormtongue side at another location. For the Fellowship, that was all part of the wet set that we'd built.
Yeah, you just lift your bow up and you blast an arrow up past the camera, right? All right?
Action! What's your hands? Well done.
I didn't have 5 months of practice for nothing, Pete.
All right, we will do checks shortly. Stand by, please.
The Saruman and Wormtongue part of that scene, that was actually done on the back lot back at Stone Street.
Which I may say we shot in the car park. In a gale. That was not a wind machine.
Poor Christopher, there was a very high wind, I remember. And I can sympathise what it's like, because I wore a very similar long white wig as Gandalf.
What really helped in the shooting of that was that it was basically one of the first days that Ian McKellen was there, and he basically, along with Bernard Hill, read all the lines off camera with Christopher.
Saruman, your staff is broken. Oh.
So Christopher wasn't just going off of anyone, he actually had Gandalf and Theoden there.
And action!
You ought to see me with a 357 Magnum. I'm awesome.
When Wormtongue rises up and comes up behind Saruman to stab him, of course it was my job as director to talk to Christopher Lee and to explain to him what I wanted. So I started to go into this long explanation about what sort of sound he should make when he got stabbed.
I seem to recall that I did say to Peter, have you any idea of what kind of noise happens when somebody is stabbed in the back? And I said, well, because I do.
Oh, yeah. You see, it's not,
I like that. It's because the breath's driven out of your body.
He proceeded to sort of talk about some very clandestine part of World War II.
He used to be in the British Secret Service, whatever they were called, the OSS.
He seemed to have expert knowledge of exactly the sort of noise that they make, and so I just sort of didn't push the subject any further. I just said, well, you obviously know what to do, Christopher, so I'm sure you'll do it great, and he did.
Now, when we did this, I just went like that and went out of frame, and Peter said, okay, cut. And I thought, she said, that's fine. And I thought, wait a minute, she's never said that before. Surely there must be something more. So they devised another ending for me.
I love the idea of Saruman landing on a spike, and I love the imagery too of the wheel sort of rotating. It almost felt appropriate to the character too, in the sense that he finally died on the machinery that he'd created, and it felt like sort of a just way for him to go out. The scene we're shooting today is one in which the people of Rohan are sort of celebrating their recent victory at Helm's Deep.
He wanted to have lighten the mood of the film in somewhat some places, and so we had this drinking scene.
So it's a drinking game. What exactly is the point of it?
Legolas is a slightly better drinker than Orlando, judging by that.
You know, everything's so pure with Orlando. Like his breath smells of flowers.
I always think of Orlando as being like a thoroughbred or a sports car, that you can't just put anything into it.
If you put any alcohol near him, he's just done. He's done. I mean, even Elijah can beat him at drinking.
It's true.
But I'm a total lightweight. I think I feel something. A slight tingling in my fingers. I think it's affecting me.
Here we go now. Very drunk, John, very drunk.
Right.
Perfect. Action.
What did I say? He can't hold his liquor.
He wouldn't just give the lines that were on the page. He would also, improvise and give 3 or 4 other things off the cuff.
Oh, yes, the dwarves that go swimming with little hairy women.
Improvisation is by its nature 97% garbage.
Give me another one.
You try things, you do things. Sometimes they work, sometimes they just make a mess. Sometimes they do both.
It was Fran and Philippa who wanted Merry and Pippin to have a song. I think they were great supporters of Merry and Pippin, to be honest.
The kind of athletic kicks that Billy does down the table is a tribute to his girlfriend, who is a ballet dancer.
She tells me when she was a young girl, just learning how to dance, they used to get them to do high kicks up and down the room. She says basically they would just be going down this room, and it just makes me laugh, the thought of all these little kids doing high kicks.
Yeah, it looks good. That's cool, isn't it?
It's going to be great.
It's a great shot.
Oh, it's good.
It's a great shot.
That was number 14. So we're out of here. We're on our way to Q stage to do the close-ups from this same scene. We're going to line those up before lunch. We will be shooting after lunch. Thank you, folks.
The Morgul Crossroads was shot in a forest near Wellington. It was just in a scrubby bit of farmland. We picked it because it had these interesting shapes of these trees that had sort of splintered and split. Waiting for the cloud. Waiting for the cloud. It can be rather distressing at times like this when you're sitting waiting. I think I kind of think at some point it'll be better to have lunch.
One of the greatest thrills I had, kind of offset, if you like, was during the filming of the Morgul Vale sequence where Gollum's leading him past the statue of the Gondorian king.
To our surprise, Sir Edmund Hillary visited that day.
Sir Edmund Hillary's about to come down for lunch.
Hey, how are you? All right. Good to see you. Good to see you. Have you had a good tour?
Oh, absolutely mind-blowing tour. It's been lovely, really.
Edmund Hillary is the first person to climb Everest in 1953. I mean, he's a genuine hero, one of New Zealand's greatest heroes. We're filming a scene down here, but you've just come for lunch. So.
Oh, right, okay.
And being a mountaineer myself, he's always been a massive hero of mine. I remember reading books about him when I was 7 years old.
Andy Serkis.
Pleased to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you. I was giddy as a schoolboy that day. I was thinking, okay, what's the first thing I'm going to say to the first man who reached the summit and returned from Everest? And how was it? How was the view? You know?
Oh, it was pretty good, really. On Everest, as they were making the final ascent, he'd just get up before anyone else was awake, and he'd go and carve the steps in the ice all the way up to the next camp. And yet here he was on our set. I remember sort of walking down the hill on this rather slippery, muddy hill, and he's an old man now, obviously, so I remember rushing forward and wanting to grab his arm and help him down, because I thought, oh my God, I hated if Ed Hillary slipped and hurt himself while he was coming to visit us on set.
It was a true honor, I think, for everybody to be in his presence. I mean, he's on the New Zealand $5 bill.
A gift from Peter Jackson.
These new $5 notes, they're plasticky things.
Yes, like, it doesn't take the ink as well.
Doesn't take as well. No, this is the second edition, so to speak.
Ed's actually a big Lord of the Rings fan. Ironically, the book was actually published the exact year that Everest was climbed.
Peter Jackson is now a huge favourite son of New Zealand. And I just love the fact that Edmund Hillary came to visit Peter Jackson.
And so to see them both, these two titans together at lunchtime, you know, it was great.
He's not dead. And then we do a cut which is behind Fon of Denethor grabbing him by the collar and just dragging him out.
One of the fun things to do on a film is to create an illusion, like in the scene in the steward's tomb when Denethor grabs Pippin and
he throws him out the door. That was in fact Fon.
Fon being my scale double, and she rolls towards camera where I am lying, and as she hits my back, I pop up.
These clever camera people worked that I think got quite excited about because it's a very simple old trick.
And it just happened about the third time we tried it. It was just perfect, and it just worked, and Pete was like, whoa, this is great. He said, we'll do another couple just in case. But it was easy as that.
Denethor had to be kicked onto the burning pyre by Gandalf's horse.
But I knew there was not a snowflake's chance in hell that the horse was going to go anywhere near burning faggots. I looked at it and thought, that's going to be very, very complex, try and put all that fire in digitally. So I got them to set up a glass at 45 degrees to the scene and lit the fire over to the side and against for a lot of blacks. So the only light coming from over there is from the fire. And it goes into the reflection and it gets reflected into the lens as well as the lens seeing through the glass.
So when you look through the camera, it looked like all these huge flames that are actually over here are actually reflected in the glass on top of the bonfire behind. So it looks like this big bonfire that's happening in front.
So it looks like the table's on fire. It looks absolutely like that.
And those flames are in the final film. We didn't need to enhance them at all.
The Corsair scene, I figured out that that's probably where I should do my cameo in this particular movie.
The whole thing about cameos, you know, I mean, obviously Peter's had a few cameos, you know, well, one in each film.
And it didn't stop there, of course, because everyone else wanted to do cameos suddenly. I think everyone thought that they can finally get to be in Lord of the Rings, and this was one of their last chances.
It became this thing of like, well, who's going to be in this? And it turned out it ended up being Andrew Lesnie, our DP, and Richard Taylor, you know, head of What a Workshop, Gino Acevedo, who's our prosthetics, you know, supervisor, and Pete, obviously. And I kind of mentioned, oh, it'd be kind of fun to get a cameo. But before we shot this whole thing, we had a quick training day.
There was a possibility that they were going to be firing arrows, so Peter wanted them to, you know, at least know how to hold it, make it quicker on the day. So I got this bunch together in a car park, and we went up on a hill and had this expert archery chap and lined them all up and had lots of practicing.
Just where you go, just let your fingers open. Okay, no, don't worry about it. Now the other secret is...
You've never seen so many dysfunctional people in your life.
Okay, when you're finished pissing around, you get that bloody elbow up.
Fortunately, the defence of our nation didn't hinge on the qualities of the archery of these pirates.
Tammy Lane did my makeup, and I had this really cool, you know, black wig. You know, it's just like, you know, I used to have hair like that in the 80s, except it was a bit more like a mullet rather than this thing.
Viva la raza!
The transformation that Richard went through, it was just unbelievable.
Richard was actually quite pale at that stage. He'd been working so many hours, and to suddenly tan him up into this swarthy pirate. He looked amazing, actually. I was very pleased with the way Richard turned out.
Richard didn't even look like Richard. Half the people didn't recognise Richard.
That morning, I invited Tanya and our son Samuel to set.
I was thinking, gosh, where's Richard? Where's Richard? And suddenly, there he was in front of me, and I'd been looking at him the whole time and hadn't recognised him.
I didn't know who it was.
What they did with Peter is that they gave him all these dreadlocks. You know, it's just not every director would just, you know, would go through this kind of stuff, but he loved it.
He did look pretty fantastic and very funny.
But I should go on set because I gotta think about what the hell we're gonna shoot. I have no idea what we're shooting, but this has been quite fun.
On the day that we were shooting it, of course, the minute you get not only the director but the DOP and various other people, things slow down a bit, just because there's a lot of hooning around going on.
The king and I, doesn't it? Andrew Lesney proved that he's better behind the camera being director of photography than being in front of it.
Andrew was nervous, Rick Porras was nervous, and it was very funny.
You seeing them behind the camera, and then all of a sudden turn around, look at the pirate ship, and see that they're all actually in front of the camera. It does make you say, oh my God, how are we going to get through this day?
Peter expected us in our part of the scene to just look angry. We just had to look menacing, and Gino, being Gino, was struggling with menacing.
So I remember just doing this. Pete's going, and he goes, all right, let me go take a look. And Pete would run down from the ship, look at that, and then he'd come back and he'd be going, Gino, what are you doing with your mouth? I'm going, well, that's kind of like my fear attack kind of grin thing. He goes, it makes it look like you're smiling. Just keep your mouth shut. It's like, great, there goes my acting career, you know.
It was actually a painful day for me because I had to get hit with this arrow, which was a CG arrow, but I had to do this fall.
Arrow fire! Oh, nasty.
I just kept thinking of Joe Cocker because he was just doing this kind of move.
Arrow fire!
I mean, I felt quite heroic, actually. I felt the buzz of what it must be like to be a stuntman on films and to be doing this and realizing that all the girls on set are looking at you with an admiring sort of gaze, you know, because you're just throwing yourself down. And like a little surge of macho pride sort of swept through the set that day.
Well, today, we're filming one of the seminal moments for Sam's character when I prepare to do Mortal Kombat with the Great Spider.
Use the light, the spider backs away, and then swing it a leg, just swing it, swipe at it.
Pete would describe what he wanted out of the scene. He would act it out.
You know, you will not touch him again as a challenge. And then you could almost use the file. Come on, let's finish it. You know, kind of make it kind of like an invitation to scrap.
Come on and finish it. That's funny. One of the crew fellas came up to me and said, "I bet this is gonna look great when it's all done." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "But you can't really see the spider." And I just looked at him dead serious and said, "Well, I see it. I see the spider."
Cut. That's good. Great, Sean. Let's do another one. That's cool. It's very good. Another one. That's great, Sean.
There's a shot of Shelob coiling up Frodo in the web, and Sam's arm comes into the frame.
It's like a gunslinger shot, a sort of a Clint Eastwood sort of, you know, hand slides into the side of frame.
That arm, I wasn't there the day they filmed that shot.
We had a stunt guy dressed up in the Sam shirt, and I was watching them filming this on the monitor on my set where I was shooting, and I was just watching it over and over again. It just wasn't looking right. So I jumped on my bicycle and I bicycled this half mile across Stone Street, leapt off the bike, ran into the stage. I kind of like threw off my shirt. I got Sam's shirt on. I grabbed the sword, and I just said, "Roll camera." So the first entry of Sam in that Shelob scene saving Frodo was actually me. It's my arm. Cut.
I love it. I love that it's Pete. Pete is Sam at that moment. Sam is Pete.
Elijah is totally enmeshed in his performance.
It's like the world's largest condom.
Elijah had to get wrapped up in this stuff, and he had to spend like all day in it. I don't know how he went to the toilet, but he couldn't go to the toilet. Couldn't even scratch his nose.
They wrapped him up in that cocoon. It was rubbery and it was tight, and I don't think he could have gotten himself out of it. And he just, you know, waited and knew that they'd cut him out, you know, eventually. And wow.
Sean thought it was incredibly frightening and claustrophobic, and thought, you know, there's no way that I could have ever been wrapped up in web and felt comfortable. Surprising that it's really comfortable. I don't think I'd want to be in it all day, though.
Wake up!
He's reputed to be one of the world's great staring contest champions.
I guess I do have a strong ability to stare.
He's got these big, beautiful eyes, but he can't see 2 feet in front of him in broad daylight.
The great irony of Elijah is he has the biggest, bluest eyes in the world, actually, and they don't work very well.
Well, my theory was that when he was a baby, because obviously you can't test a baby for how bad their eyes are, for the first couple of years he was just like this, you know, trying to focus on everything and bring his world into view, that it just stayed like that, you know. So as he grew up, his eyes just stayed at this constant state of surprisement, you know.
What do I do now? What do I do?
Now, what's going to happen when Sean lifts him up? Because I wouldn't mind, we should still roll, even if we get a bit of his eyes and stuff, we should still roll and just see what we get.
Right now!
The whole of Pelennor Fields was really difficult because it was such a kind of massive battle.
Pelennor Fields was just huge. It was very tough on people just because of the energy levels that were required with the filming. It was just immense. I find it quite hard to describe, really.
I finally get to fight in this movie. I actually get to fight more in the extended DVD than I did in the theatrical.
It was the attitude that she brought to it and the respect that she got from the stunt team because of pushing herself so hard and putting so much into it, because she's not a natural fighter.
I think we should just roll, because you sort of know what you're doing, and I think you just need to... Well, yeah, no, but, you know, even if you don't know what you're doing, make it look good. Good, shall we just try one more? For luck. That was pretty good, though, didn't it?
Okay.
That was really good, really good.
Okay.
All he wanted to capture was just that moment of that morning star about to crush her, and we had to just keep on shooting it until he got that moment. And this was continuously, and I was going, oh my God, she's getting tired.
And action. Okay, we'll just try one more. Desperate Miranda, wait. Duck at the last minute, Miranda. That was great, Miranda. Let's just do one more and then we'll break for lunch.
I was actually just sitting there crying at one stage, and I didn't even know that I was crying. It was one of those things of being so kind of shell-shocked by the whole experience, that just sort of sitting there and then realising that I had tears running down my face.
Sorry, Miranda, we'll just do one. Actually, Richard, yes. Just flick on to 12 frames a second now. We'll do a 12 frame a second variation.
I was feeling really sorry for her, and I was going, cut now. And he finally yelled, cut, and she was knackered.
All right, great. That was a great day. Thank you. Just remember, pain is temporary, film is forever.
But it's all worth it. It's all worth it in the end.
For the Black Gates and Mordor location, we need an area that's a bit like a desert, because New Zealand's a very green country and quite mountainous. To actually find something flat with no vegetation is very difficult, and this area of the desert road is unfortunately the same area as the New Zealand Army do their live firing exercises.
The Air Force drop bombs here, there's demolitions are done here.
Because this is really the only place in the country that we'd be able to shoot this stuff.
Unfortunately, because it's quite soft sand here, there's always going to be a certain amount left behind.
The first day that we showed up there to shoot, we were taken into this big tent.
This officer of the army stood up in front of us as we were all eating our eggs and bacon in the morning or whatever, and just said,
"This is a bomb, this is a rocket, all these things you might find out here, don't touch them."
So there are mines buried in the ground.
Don't dig any holes in the ground, or don't kick anything, or because the army didn't want to be responsible for blowing us up.
And we get out on set, and you're in the middle of fighting and stuff, and you look down, and sure enough, there's the fins of a bomb sticking out in the ground.
And we were filming right in the middle of it, doing a battle sequence, churning up the earth with all of us running around, jumping up and down.
You know, constantly through the day, they'd be coming in and clearing it away.
I'd rather you didn't capture that on film.
They had some tape cordoning off a certain area, but
I said, does that mean that inside this tape we're fine? No, but there's less bombs where you are than on the other side of that tape.
Yeah, no, if you go halfway between that and the pine forest, way over there. Now, you're not going that far, but that's where you'd be aiming.
I was particularly nervous on one shot we did where we had Vigo and one or two of the other actors galloping across the desert towards the Black Gate. And I remember the army had sort of pointed out the zone that they'd cleared. I think that they went a little further than they were supposed to, and I think we were all hoping like hell they weren't going to step on a landmine or something, but they didn't.
Added a little extra tension, added a little more chaos to the already existing chaos of our shoot.
It's typical Pete Jackson, you know, he's just, I mean, you could see Pete like giggling and like loving the fact that we're in this place where, you know, it's like a death zone.
Okay, guys, let's shoot like a team!
We were also using New Zealand Army for the extras. We had sergeants in amongst the rank.
I want you to fill gaps, okay? Come forward, mate. Fill gap.
They became our ADs, essentially, in rubber suits.
Yeah, if you're going to form a rank all around the top.
Okay, what we need to do in this half here, leave the front pretty thin. Everyone else, slowly drift back.
For the first time in the history of making this film, you could go, everybody stand on a straight line, and whoosh, they did.
Action! Number 4, right turn. Number 2, quick mark.
And you almost got a fright. It was so efficient.
And I know that they really got quite physical and seemed to enjoy beating the hell out of each other when those scenes where the two forces were clashing.
And action!
I wish we'd worked more with those guys, although it's not like the stunt players where they knew that it was make-believe.
You don't have to swing that hard, okay? What's going to happen then if you swing, you miss, you cut him. He's going to cut you. It's all acting, eh?
Those guys really took it kind of seriously.
And poor Weta had this terrible attrition rate with their weapons because these guys would not do it pretend. They would bash the crap out of each other.
Today, so far, so good. Only a couple gone down.
Glad you find it funny.
2 head injuries and 3 ankles.
I got a shield in the face and seen the bright shinies and been a bit concussed.
So, you know, it was legit.
Kind of dangerous. In Pete's fight sequences, you get a sense of mayhem.
And it's just bedlam. There's just people like screaming and getting thrown around.
Doing battles is like you can rehearse something, but every time you do it, something changes, and the cameras are always in different places. So this is never planned. This is chaos, organised chaos. I wanted to roll on for a little bit longer so Ian can do some reactions to camera.
Oh, that would have been good. Yes.
Yeah. The thing that's tricky with doing all that camera work when you're right in close is the sheer physical danger of it. And I know that Andrew and some of the camera guys had to put on polo armour.
To make sure that if he ever got hit by anyone, that he would survive the blow.
I think he liked it. I think Andrew really, really liked that.
All right. I mean, you seem to get some good stuff at times. I mean you got a bit boned at one point, but it seemed to be quite busy.
Yeah.
For Frodo.
After Aragorn, you know, basically runs into death, the next 2 people who go are the 2 hobbits.
The hobbits take off first. I love that. That's one of my favorite things about it.
Billy and I just sat being so scared for Fawn, who was playing Billy's scale double, and Kieran Shah, who was playing my scale double, because these are slightly smaller stature people, and if they lose it on this very uneven ground, there's going to be 200 people running behind them who are not even going to know that they're on the floor, just trampling them to death. I kind of mentioned that to Pete, and you could just see him just rubbing his hands and just like, I know.
Hey, I'm going to get a kick from Hulk for hitting me on the head with one of our weapons.
I mean, when I started this job, I was a 6-stone weakling.
Almost an angel?
Yeah, I'm a 14-stone warrior now. I mean, I could take out any one of these guys in a heartbeat.
You can see the fear in their eyes when they look at you. It's quite incredible.
Looks quite good. And there's actually quite a good ridge. You could almost use those background rocks there as part of it. That slow crawl up the side of Mount Doom was just satisfying because you're finally at the meat of the story. You know, it's taken us a long time to get there, but this is what it's all about.
Sean and I were both equally kind of nervous about approaching that moment and that scene because we knew we had something pretty serious that we had to nail.
I got this sense that the whole movie and this have built towards this moment.
I sort of stuffed up the planning of the key day because you know, by the time we were ready to shoot that critical scene between Frodo and Sam, we only had 2 hours left, and all the rest of the time had been spent shooting crawling shots. What we had to do, which is something that we hardly ever did, which is called cross coverage, which is always difficult to do, where you're basically shooting both actors at the same time. We didn't have time to shoot them separately. We had to shoot it all at once.
I can't recall the taste of food. The sound of water.
What was great about that is we could be completely in the moment and it was going to be used because we were both being covered, so it was perfect.
Then let us be rid of it. Once and for all.
And we were just in the zone. It just felt incredible.
I can't carry it for you. But I can carry you.
And I remember at a certain point, Peter came out from around the monitor, and his glasses were all fogged up, and there were tears coming down his cheeks.
It was one of those moments where we knew we'd got it. We knew we had something special.
That's the ultimate, you know, to affect your director emotionally.
So coming.
You should hang on just before you don't look as if you can even go too far. It's like come on, Frodo, but you can't really move. And then at that point, Gollum appears.
Classic filmmaking form. That one of the first shots that I ever did on the movie was the penultimate clash between Frodo, Sam, and Gollum up on the side of Mount Doom.
Wicked dragons mustn't hurt process.
That shot of Gollum just leaping onto Frodo and them tumbling down, you have to imagine that was done in this really rocky, bouldery place.
Okay. Just hanging on to the ankle.
You know, it's extraordinary to think now that that was one of the first scenes that we ever shot together as a threesome. But Pete chose to extend that sequence.
So they rebuilt that rock structure of that side of the volcano on the stage later on, and we filmed that.
And rather ironically, one of the last things we ever shot was the same scene and came back to do it again. Using motion capture on set at the same time, we finished that scene off. Well, today's rather special because it's the first time we're attempting to actually shoot on 35mm and shoot the motion capture at the same time.
And Andy Lecter is arriving on set.
On that set, I remember doing something I had tried to push for over 2 years, which was live on set motion capture, because it always occurred to me, particularly as we were getting crushed for time in delivering, that to have Peter or Fran have to direct Andy on the set and then spend the day or a week directing him again doing the same sequence on a motion capture stage was a total waste of their time and energy, particularly at a time when they didn't have time or energy to waste.
We did a deal with the motion capture guys, which was basically, listen, if you can do it at the same time as we're shooting without holding us up one minute, then we'll be happy.
The main thing that I'm sort of looking for is how much we're impacting or not impacting the normal shoot, which is one thing we don't want to do, is we don't want to come here and stop the shoot for half an hour or even 5 minutes, basically.
Yeah, that was cool.
Getting boned by that.
And action!
That's cool.
So he doesn't have to do mocap on this now, and some other thing?
This is it.
This is the first time in the history of cinema this has ever been...
I don't know.
We'll say yes.
We'll say yes. We'll take credit.
I tell you what, it worked absolutely perfectly. It was the culmination, really, of the technical achievement of Gollum, really, and it happened in the last few weeks of Return of the King.
You know, I'm a married man and I have children, and one of my wife's least favorite things, I don't think it's a secret to say, is that she doesn't like when as an actor, have kissing scenes in movies.
Christine and the girls would visit Sean on set quite often. I think that day, it wasn't necessarily that appropriate for them to be on set.
Is Christine on set, Sean? Do we have to
Not yet,
throw her off?
No, there's no problem.
We don't have to throw her off?
No, no problem.
Okay.
She won't see the third film.
And we'll tell her that we got it in one take. Don't worry. We'll just we'll just tell the crew to kind of just say one take, it was done. So
Okay.
It was over.
Okay.
I was on the set just watching, you know, it was kind of a happy moment.
And we're cutting there, thank you.
The kiss should just feel a bit more like a smacker towards the end.
Okay.
Just put your arm around her shoulders, you know what I mean, and just squeeze her in tight. And just, and just enjoy the cheers.
I think Pete wants to play Rosie.
No.
You know, it's going okay, but it didn't seem like Sean was getting what he wanted. You know, it wasn't, nobody was totally happy, so they kept doing it. And I thought, So I ran over to Billy's trailer and woke him up.
It's very hot, so you may want to be sort of back here and then just step in, but you can be here. Camera tracks across, and your camera right at the end of the eye line.
Camera right?
Yeah.
So me and Vigo get in behind the camera, so that when they turn round and they're looking, at least they're looking at someone they know, and they can kind of, you know, imagine they're at a wedding, their wedding, and their friends are there.
We provided some, you know, off-camera help to him.
Hey! Grab our shoe, please. Let's lock it down.
Is this helpful? Or?
Yeah, I like it.
And camera set.
And then in one of the takes, they turn round and I'm like, yay! And Vigo grabs me and kisses me hard in the mouth. I mean, like, I've never been kissed from man nor woman. And by God, I saw stars. And I think I fell in love for a split second. And then I felt a bit sick.
Did you see what they did? Franny.
You don't know about this?
You never heard this?
I think, I'm not saying, I think I felt tongue.
I think you opened your mouth. I was watching.
No, he did. He did.
I can't believe that. Dirty buggers.
Seemed to work. The next take, they said, okay, we got it, you know, so.
I like the kiss on that one the best.
You did?
But that was take 10.
No. There was only one take. That's what Peter said. We're gonna tell Christine. There's only one take.
Oh, yeah, it was one. Right.
And I don't know if that helped their reaction, but I couldn't look at Vigo for a couple of days. Felt dirty.
Yeah. And I'd been secretly wanting to do that with Billy, which is a whole nother. Maybe we shouldn't talk about that.
He's quite an affectionate man.
I was kind of jealous because I remember the first party we kissed each other. Remember?
Yeah.
Remember?
I've kissed most of the boys.
You have?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, Billy Boyd gets himself about.
I don't mind.
I know for a fact
I'll kiss anybody.
that he's kissed 5 members of the Fellowship, male members of the Fellowship. Not like Liv Tyler, Kate Blanchett, and then a couple of, you know, drunken moments. 5 men.
Let's go kiss again.
I will not say do not weep, for not all tears are an evil.
Well, I think we were all semi-dreading the Greyhaven sequence, and also, you know, in a sick kind of way, looking forward to it, because as actors, to be crying all day and to be in a state is one of the ultimate places that you can go.
A lot of people have said to me that that must have been like the final thing you shot was the Greyhavens, was you guys saying goodbye to each other. And it wasn't. It was right in the thick of principal photography, and we had to think, what have we been through?
We hadn't been to Mordor and back. So even though my mind knew that, okay, we were going to have this big experience and this was after the big experience, I was a little uncomfortable hoping that it would have hit the right emotional pitch.
So we spent the whole day doing this scene and basically in tears, like for the whole day. And, you know, it just gives you a headache, and It's really hard to get to that emotional pitch.
It is time, Frodo.
But I think it was also difficult because we could imagine ourselves having to say goodbye to each other, and that was a difficult thing to accept, and that made the scene all the more emotional.
So when the end of the day came, although it was a great day, it was like, oh, thank God that's over, and we've got it, and that's great. Next morning we come in, and it turns out that Sean Astin, during dinner break of the day of the Grey Havens, had went off to make a phone call or something, and took his costume off. So when he came back, he forgot to put his waistcoat on, or vest, as you call it in the USA.
And it didn't have the right vest on. I didn't have the right vest on. So we had to reshoot it.
Can you believe that? That this scene that was just like so kind of emotional, but then you had to go back knowing what it was going to feel like, filming another whole day of that. So it was like, oh.
It was one of those moments where you felt that you captured magic and you didn't know whether you could ever do it again.
We were just crushed. We were just all so deflated.
And I remember the three other hobbits looked at me like, we will kill you, you jerk.
I mean, I felt so sorry for Sean Astin, but I was part of the witch hunt that went on. He'd come on set and we were like, that's the way, are you sure that's the waistcoat? It's not a brown one, it's not a blue one.
Cool, thank you.
And then they got the negative back. They got a call from the lab with the redo that we had done with the right vest on.
We went and looked at the stuff, and it was the most dispiriting thing because the majority of it was out of focus. I had the job of having to go to the Hobbits the following morning and say, hey, I saw the footage last night. And, of course, they're all going, yeah, and, they're wanting to hear how great it was. And I'm saying, we're going to have to shoot it again. It was out of focus. And I could see this horrible moment on their faces where they thought I was joking. It was one of those situations where I wished I was joking. I wished it was a joke. Because they were just going, Peter, oh, yeah, oh, yeah. It was like Peter's trying to pull our leg again, and it was like, guys, I promise you I am not joking. This is absolutely serious.
So we had to redo it again. And then everybody was like, they were double mad at me. Do you have the right vest on this time? Like, we don't have to do it a fourth time because...
We got it again. We did manage to get it as good, fortunately, but it was just one of those kind of horrible moments.
If you were to say to an actor, we will give you a guaranteed get out of jail free card if you want to choose one day where you never have to do that day again, I think all four of us would have said, Grey Havens. There's the irony, that's the journey. That's how we earn our stripes,
Well, I'm sort of in quite a strange place, I guess, because it's just over 24 hours to go till we finish shooting The Lord of the Rings after 14 months. And I guess at the moment, my emotions are torn in all directions. Obviously in some way it's very sad because we're saying goodbye to a lot of people. A lot of actors are finishing up their roles, and it's been the end of a very long journey. On the other hand, I'm very happy and relieved because shooting a film, whatever size the film is always a tremendous strain. There's a lot of pressure, a lot of, you just lose a lot of sleep at night. And after 14 months, it's certainly, I do feel like it's time to get over that and to have a bit of a break. So I'm happy, sad.
The end of principal photography was all a huge rush because we had to wrap before the Christmas break of that year.
And suddenly we really kind of ran out of time, and there became this moment where Peter was directing I think something like 10 units at once.
I think we'd gotten to the point where there were 7 units shooting 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, meaning camera was always rolling.
The other one right away. It was crunch time. We had to finish.
In the course of one day, I think I did like 7 or 8 different costume changes.
You'd get 3 or 4 call sheets a day and have to be on different units.
So what else are we doing today? Oh, we're doing Don Harrow.
I mean, it was just really a juggling act. Most movies are to some degree, but I've never seen anything like that. Doing all 3 movies in the same day.
Si no me maruan,
The end of Principal Photography, I was sort of excited because I was looking forward to going back to America, looking forward to going back home, and we were shooting the coronation scene.
It's quite a big, scary scene because it's the end of the movie and the first time they're seeing each other again and kind of being reunited.
But it was done in a really, rushed way, and for me that day was, incredibly depressing, actually, because I was so tired, and it was obviously a culminating moment for that character, and it was done like.
Tell us where your frame comes down here.
Yeah, MCU. With that fraction lower.
In that moment when Viggo and I see each other for the first time and we have our kiss, and they shot Viggo's coverage, and then suddenly he was sort of whisked off, and we had a little break while they turned around onto me, and he was like halfway back to the studio because they wanted me to shoot my kiss with his stunt double. And I completely had a heart attack. I was like, what do you mean? It's my last moment in the movie. It's so important. I can't kiss his double. So they brought Viggo back, thank God, and I got to kiss Viggo.
Also, when we filmed originally the coronation sequence, Elrond had a hairdo, and I don't know where this hairdo came from.
Gail, my makeup and hair artist, started to sort of think, well, perhaps for this shot we'll have a little ringlet thing here or a little ringlet thing there, or perhaps for this scene because you've got your crown on we might have a little thing,
It was pretty far out there.
It actually looked quite beautiful from the back, but you never saw it from the back. It just looked slightly ridiculous from the front.
My friends, you bow to no one.
And Principal Photography, the last scene we filmed together was where Viggo says, "You bow to no man."
And the great thing about that was that Viggo was available to do the shot. I mean, he wasn't on camera, but he came and did the shot. He fashioned his own crown because they didn't have a crown for him. So he made a crown out of paper, and in every different shot, the crown became more and more silly. And we're kind of bowing at him going,
And when we finished that, they brought us a bottle of champagne each, and we popped it on set.
Well, beautiful way to end it. The hobbits, 4 hobbits together. We started, first shot was the 4 hobbits on the wooded road. Last shot, 4 hobbits at the coronation. It just kind of, sort of a symmetry to it.
Nobody's ever shot 3 huge movies in a row before, and I think the most interesting thing I've discovered over the last 14 months is exactly why nobody's ever done that. Now I know, and therefore I won't be doing it again.
I'm looking forward to going home, very much so.
The very last thing I directed as part of the principal photography of Lord of the Rings in the end of 2000 was a scene that didn't actually make it into the movie. It was a little moment, a montage moment, of Viggo putting on the sort of his new armour. It's not really armour, but it's the leather jerkin and the chainmail and things that he wears as the king.
Kane and Dave are going to dress Aragorn.
It was kind of like a gift to Weta and a nice acknowledgement of Weta, having 2 guys who had worked every single day, worked their asses off, getting us ready for battle, getting to have them on film, doing what they did. They were being Weta guys, putting my stuff on.
Very sorry. This film is now shut down.
It's gone far too long.
Oh my God. Sorry, guys.
Officer, can we do one more shot, please?
Maybe just one more.
One. Make it snap.
No, please, I beg you.
550, goodbye. Common slate, 1 pickup.
Just step aside for a sec, guys, so we can check the pre-frame. Yeah, okay, good. Stepping back in, thanks.
Yep. Set.
Set.
Okay, put me with the buckles. 3, 2, 1, fire. Cut, that's great. All right, that's excellent. Let's check that. Great coverage.
Yeah. Please, Ben.
Gate's clear.
Nice clear gate. Well,
Gate's clear.
It's all hinging on you, Carl. Gate's clear, very good. Viggo's last shot with one arm.
I just can't believe it's over. It's just the weirdest feeling. We finish in Minas Tirith.
Congratulations. Thanks, everybody. Thank you all for an incredible effort. It's been a pleasure to work with all of you. Love it. We party tonight. So we had a wrap party, actually, our true wrap party of Principal Photography.
It was in a very big shed on the wharf with a lot of people I've never seen before in my life.
There's just been not enough time or opportunities to thank people. There's been so much work has happened behind the scenes, happened at all hours of the day and night, and by people that I've never even met or had a chance to talk to, who have never ever been told thank you. And so this is the only chance I can ever really have to say a huge thank you to everybody who's worked on the film.
And then we flew home the next day, and got home, and I didn't quite know what to do with myself.
I remember saying bye to Pete and being upset and being like, bye, and I miss you, and it was so amazing. And Pete was like, we'll see, don't worry.
We didn't know at the time that we'd be coming back for pickups. So it was a mixture of all sorts of odd emotions, of being incredibly sad and not knowing when we'd see these people again.
I suppose there was a thought that there would be pickup shooting. I was probably naive enough to think that there wouldn't be, which shows how little I knew about making movies back then. I know a lot more now.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. It's the beginning of the end.
Well, everything is that, of course.
The concept of doing pickups and, rewriting scenes and writing new scenes and shooting stuff and tweaking the films and stuff, that's obviously a tool that we've utilised as much as we possibly can in the making of these 3 films.
We corrected scenes, we kind of fine-tuned scenes.
So there were elements of the original Coronation shooting which I wasn't that happy with.
3 years almost later, we revisit the same scene, and Pete is able to take the time with it, and I was very happy.
That was good. We just wanted to be a bit more joyous, a bit more cheering this time round. I also reshot the scene with him and Arwen. They come together and there's just a small kiss. It didn't have as much joy, and I thought, well, what would I want to see? What would I want to do? I thought, well, they'd have to be formal because it's a formal occasion, but then their love for each other would just overwhelm everything, and they'd just grab each other and snog.
We spent a whole day shooting that scene, and we really focused on it, and everybody felt really good about it. And that was actually my last day of shooting ever, that little pickup.
It was very kind of emotional going back for the reshoots as well, because it was like, it was the last time I'm going to put on the blonde wig and the last time I put on the ears.
It was the last time that we would collectively inhabit Middle-earth.
Last time.
But yeah, it's starting to get a bit sad. It's almost the end.
First shot, August 1999. Final shot, what are we in, July? July 2003. Could this be the longest day of my life?
Nothing can really prepare you for that, 4 years down the line, and finally you've arrived at that day in which is your last day, your official last day.
The last shot came up. It was a fight sequence. It was the take before the last take I ever was going to shoot on Lord of the Rings. And my bow broke. And I couldn't believe it. My bow broke. My bow's not supposed to break. This bow had been with me for 18 months of filming. And I went over to Pete and Fran, and I said, my bow's broke. And they were like, wow. Well, I guess it's coming to the end then, eh?
That's Andy's last shot.
Andy's last
shot. Mr. Aston. Oh, well, John's last day today, everybody. The last day he's ever going to have to put this makeup on, ever.
Poor John would get so itchy from having the makeup on, and he could not help himself. But
scratch.
The penultimate day, the makeup had been so irritating that I almost spent the entire day screaming.
And jack up!
How I resisted just ripping it off my face, I do not know.
There's a very special presentation that's been made here.
What we presented him with was his last face that he wore. And we had a fire going, so we said, you know, John, we'd love to give this to you and present this to you, and you know, we'd love for you to get this and throw this into the fire. My God, I never saw a man move so fast. He grabbed it, ripped it out of our hands, ran over to the fire, and just threw that face inside there, and the thing just went up in flames. The pleasure in this man's face, knowing that he would never, ever have to wear that piece again. He just, I mean, there were almost tears of joy.
Well, there goes my career. I am here now officially telling you, my fellow dwarves, that I will never again play a dwarf. Ever again.
We do want to, when we wrap today, we do want to have you back to have a proper little farewell with you, if that's all right, just at 6:30.
It was recognized that there was a need for some sort of closure, that one by one, as the actors were finally leaving the project, that a recognition of that and a celebration of that would be emotionally important for the people who'd been involved.
As we finished each cast member their last day on set, we decided to do a little farewell to them.
We gave gifts to the actors, which were usually a prop or a costume that was particularly associated with the actors.
It's the lights, your
The greatest gift that was given to me was one of the rings. Precious. I think it's rather poetic that one of the two people that they gave them to were the two ring bearers in the movie.
I'd always said I would really like the silver belt that I wore on a number of costumes, and then also the sword, of course. Everybody wants their sword.
I got my sword, Sting, and my last pair of feet.
I was given Glamdring, Gandalf's sword.
Look up, stand back!
I stole other artifacts. When Elijah Wood and I realized that it was our last day in Bag End, the Hobbit hole, I said to him, Elijah, you realize if we don't do it now, we won't get another chance. And so we just went round the set, imagining what would be an appropriate, something that we could take that perhaps people wouldn't miss.
The best gift, best souvenir, is in here and in here. You know, it's the memory of working with those people, the friendships that developed.
What you have achieved is sheer magic, all of you. All of you, and I think that is the operative word, all of you. You are the greatest crew I've ever known.
I'm astonished when I come back in year 4 now that I still find the same passion and dedication and love for what we do here in New Zealand. Because I'll tell you what, you don't find it in LA. Well, it's here.
I end up getting really upset because I'd spent so long with those people, and because everybody had been so generous with their time and themselves, you know, they'd given so much of themselves to all of us.
Working on this film and being in New Zealand and, you know, allowing me to be influenced by all you people and watching your kids grow up, and you know, it's just made me want to become a better person, and I can't think of a better compliment to give you guys than you've made me want to better the person that I was, and thank you very much.
Sometimes it was hard to keep the tears back, and I think that the actors themselves, it was almost worse for them, really, because they were quite overwhelmed by the fact that this journey was coming to an end.
Viggo was nervous on his last day. Viggo was an intensely popular guy on the whole shoot, and I think he was just starting to feel that it was a significant day for him, but also truly significant for everybody else.
Okay, good, we should check it.
Thank you.
Done?
That's Viggo's last shot, everybody.
So once he wrapped, there was a couple of little handshakes and hugs. But then Viggo wanted to go off and get out of his gear.
So I went back to the bus immediately. That's where I went.
Viggo had a makeup bus. It was an old bus that was recommissioned and rebuilt as a makeup trailer.
We'd been sitting on it for God knows how many years, but it had never actually moved. No one had actually sat on it while it moved. So I said, we've got to move this. We've got to go for a ride.
All of a sudden, the bus started moving. I'm like, what's going on?
So off we went down the street.
And then they stopped the bus, and Burner took over, which was really alarming.
And they drive into the studio. And there's probably 300 people just hanging about, waiting.
The bus did not make a very smooth stop.
And he comes out like this conquering hero. You know, it's like winning the World Cup.
Tangata kai mana wa nei o LOTR. Standing in front of us, we have two kings. Your warriors, your chiefs, your friends, but most importantly of all, your family. Family to us, the Lord of the Rings stunt team.
And it was actually quite emotional after that. I mean, there was this incredible haka. They gave him a haka.
This is only performed for dignitaries or, people of importance. And, Viggo, throughout the whole filming of it, was really an important part of the film. He ended up being king.
And of course, at the end of it, V goes around and does a headbutt.
I wanted to say goodbye, give each of them a hug, but of course, the first one I saw was like, bam. And then I did another one. I realized, well, I have to do them all now.
Man, his head was just welted up big time.
Yeah, it's a good thing I wasn't shooting the next day.
What am I doing? What are we doing? What's happening?
I think probably for me the toughest was Elijah.
All right.
Here we come for rehearsal.
Frodo is really, in some respects the heart and soul of these movies, and it's his journey, it's his story. We start with Frodo and we finish with Frodo. Just give us a beat, Zoe. Don't rush it.
The last shot was a pickup from Bag End when Frodo was finishing up writing his story of what he's experienced in Bilbo's book. And essentially the subtext of the scene is that Frodo knows he's going to leave and that he's going to leave the book to Sam.
Oh. What is it? Oh. It's been 4 years to the day since Weathertop, Sam. It's never really healed.
And one more, that's nice, Elijah. Just give us more of a sense that you're distancing yourself from Sam, that you've already made the decision and that you've now got to cut your emotional ties with him.
It was amazing because it was, it came at the perfect time for me, or not the perfect time, depending on how you look at it, because I was also preparing to leave. It was my goodbye too.
Okay, we'll just keep rolling. We may as well have another crack at that.
Keep it locked down.
It was really quiet, it had really quietened down, and everyone was there. Pete was talking really quietly.
Good, and just give us a very slow, melancholy one now, even slower and more disconnected from Sam. I have this terrible requirement when I'm shooting to, if I'm happy, I say, right, we've got it, check the gate, which is normally fine, but it's a terrible thing on the last shot because I sort of don't want to say that. You got room for one more on the mag? Hey? Okay, here we go.
I actually remember at the time thinking, you've got this. You got it 3 takes ago. Like, you know, they were doing it over and over again.
And one more. And at the end of each take, there'd be the silence, and it was like, is Peter going to say, we've got it, check the gate, or is Peter going to ask for another take? And I think all of us really just wanted to keep doing more and more takes. One more. Here you go, and action.
Looking over at Pete, and you could just see him just not wanting to stop, you know.
And The Lord of the Rings by Frodo Baggins. You finished it.
Not quite. There's room for a little more.
And cut. That's great, we'll check the gate. Good. Lovely last shot.
Thank you, Pete. Man, I'll never forget it. It's imprinted upon my memory for the rest of my life. Burst into tears. And he just said thank you over and over again.
Oh, Peter. Gate's good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been so amazing, Peter.
You've been so amazing. You've been great. Thank you very, very much.
Righto, everybody.
We just went through this series of farewells, and it made the pickup shooting on Return of the King very weird because it made it incredibly emotional. It shouldn't have been emotional. It should have just been straightforward. We were just shooting some scenes for the movie, but it was a 2-month period of closure and tears and hugs and it was tough. It was a weird, very, very powerful period of time. So we just said goodbye to Frodo Baggins, and it does feel like we're all off to the Grey Havens. It's the end of an era, really. So, yeah, kind of another sad day. Thank you.